we have an excellent panel. Dr. Tripta Thakur would be joining us soon. But really, we have got an eminent panel here with really leaders in their own right, in their own respective fields. And I'm looking forward to having this discussion. And because we have, a little shortage of time. So, Ripu, what time do we have to wrap up? Or if you can let us know? 12:30. Okay. Thank you. So generous of Ripu. Okay, so we'll keep our introduction to a little bare minimum. So please apologize. I'm also apologizing in advance if I'm cutting you short or asking you to rush. So yeah. So we had an excellent context setting in the morning with both Vartika as well as Mansi. They were excellent. They touched upon many of the themes, in specifically on the integrating women in the energy sector. And before that, the ambassador himself had set a context in terms of how India is really growing in this field, in the field of renewable energy, and it is soon going to be one of the leaders in terms of renewable energy production, whether it's solar, battery, or what may. And that provides an excellent opportunity for women also to play a role in the whole renewable energy space, in the clean energy transition space. And we are here to discuss that with all of you. And what I'm going to do is, quickly maybe introduce you first, and then I can go about asking my questions. So we have with us Dr. Rachna Garg, Professor, Head of Electrical Engineering, Delhi Technical University, Dr. Vibha Dhawan, Director General TERI, Ms. Gauri Johar, Executive Director S&P Global Commodity Insights, and Mahua, who is the founder CEO of Intent. Dr. Thakur will, Director General of NPTI, will be joining us soon. So maybe we can start with you, ma'am. The first question, basically what we'll do is keep this response a little short so that we have more time for the other two questions. But just wanted to hear, you've been in this space now for so long, and with the whole clean energy transition happening, with the way which we are envisaging renewable energy to growing, what do you think, first, what inspired you to join this career, and how do you see women leadership playing a very transformative role in this space?
First of all, a very good morning to all of you. And at the outset, I would like to thank USAID and SAVI for inviting me to this very important and panel discussion. And I am also happy to be introduced to all my co-panelists, lovely ladies, and all the lovely participants present here. So thank you all for attending this panel discussion and inviting me for it. Now, as far as I am concerned, I was not in the beginning in the area of renewable energy. When I was studying, there was no word like renewable energy. All of us, we had studied only about the conventional sources of energy. And likewise, my interest was in power system with conventional energy sources. But at the back of my mind, I always think that the fossil fuels, they are causing so much of the environmental hazard, if not now, then in future. And similarly, even in hydropower, they are causing so much of displacement, ecological unbalance. So that was the thing at the back of my mind. Then when my son was born, he was very allergic to the air. With air pollution, he has developed respiratory problems and all, and that causes me to become more aware about the environmental issues. And then slowly and slowly, at that time, the clean and green concept of clean and green energy has started emerging up. And then I realized that if I can uh, merge my interest in power system with environmental issues, I will have a win-win situation. And then slowly and slowly, I had been diverted to the field of renewable energy. So it is a gradual transition from conventional power system to renewable energy in my case. And also, as far as the role of female leadership is concerned, I think it is undeniable that the female leadership will contribute towards the area of renewable energy. The women, they bring diverse, they have a diverse viewpoint. They bring inclusivity. They bring their different skill sets to the table, and this will enhance the process of decision making. And also, the women are more naturally, they are inclined towards the societal need, they are more inclined towards the inclusivity, and with this they are in a better position to have a, what you can say, they are the better ambassador for keeping in mind, looking into the societal need for a good environment, for a better environment, and also for the equitable distribution of renewable energy sources. The good example is the village women. They have, for years, they were using the stoves with wood as a fuel, and that was causing health hazard to them. But
Am I?
nowadays, with the renewable energy sources, they can use the other sources like biogas, etc., for their cooking, and this has helped them
Yeah.
tremendously.
Ma'am,
So,
can I ask a
yeah,
question?
so women are
Sorry.
definitely in the forefront, and they are very, they can be a very good ambassador for the cause of renewable energy. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Over to Dr. Dhawan, if you can also add a little bit on your journey and only aspects which maybe ma'am has not covered.
Well, uh, quite many points have been highlighted by Rachna, so I'll come straight to what perhaps I like to add. Now, Terry was established in 1974 by Tata's, and our name was Tata Energy Research Institute. So, in 74, not many people were talking about renewable energy, but Terry was established basically to work on renewables. And why? It was because of the energy shock or the price of energy going up. So it was felt that India is an energy starved country. Let's look at, and let's, even if we look back, why our development has been comparatively slow. And one of the main reasons for that is that it is that we had to import every drop of energy. And with the result, the things becomes expensive. We are not competitive in the international market. Let's also look at, if we look at our villages, why growth is slow. It is not the producer of food grain which makes money, it's the trader, it's the value addition. And it's not that we don't have technologies, we do have technologies. Indians are very hardworking, they are very entrepreneurial. The only one of the limiting factors is access to energy. It's only now that we have started talking of that each village should be electrified. Yes, electrification has been achieved, but let's look at the reliability of energy, which is still not there, and the role which renewables can play. My own journey, I'll say, by training, I'm a plant biotechnologist, then I move into biofuels, and from biofuels into other renewable energies as well. And I see two advantages of renewable energy. One is that India as a country, we have so much of sunny days, and illumination levels are so high that the cost of renewable energy, solar energy in India is far cheaper than most other countries. The other is, as I said, that we need to produce electricity on decentralized basis as well. Because if you go by grid, it's not always possible. If there is a fault and they say it will take you a week to repair, it's really going to cost dearly to those communities because of reliability. And I'll share one example. Like, we are working with Brass Cluster in Muradabad, and we gave them renewable solar energy. And when I discussed with them, they said the biggest advantage we see is not because we are not that much bothered whether it's clean or not. I'm more bothered about reliability, because the day I know there is sunshine, I can employ X number of casuals to work in my factory, because otherwise you don't know. They start working, and after an hour the light goes off and you have to pay them at the end of the day, and you are not meeting your order in time, and therefore you suffer losses. So with renewable energy they can do it. And what I want, again, just last point, that if we look at our rural India, the women, they work so hard even to collect wood to prepare their food, and thereafter perishables they simply lose. So they are always loser. So I'll talk more about it later.
Thank you so much. Thank you for highlighting the importance of decentralized systems. Yeah, so Mahua, you bring in perspective from different sectors, specifically mobility as well. But yeah, looking forward to hearing your journey and what do you think about the transformative role women can play?
Thank you. Firstly, thank you for having me at this event, and it's so wonderful to see so many people over here and so many women and men. No? It's quite important that these discussions we have the men as well. Okay, so two buckets. I'll respond to your question on personal journey. Maybe I'll put three buckets out there, or little three milestones. Um, Unlike Dr. Dhawan, I studied environmental management. So 20 something years ago, there was a degree. So I was a little bit in that privileged crowd that was part of a degree thinking about these things. I also have a management degree. The management degree was tied to the environment school. So that didn't exist, but it existed for me back then. How did I didn't bump into this. I had an advisor who said, well, if you want to study anything to do with business and the environment, go to carbon markets or go to water, because those were the two areas I was told. So I went off into carbon markets because the Kyoto Protocol had just been ratified. And I thought, oh wow, this is so cool because it's a new area. I didn't think gender at that time. You're 24. You don't think gender. You're indestructible in your 20s and you think nothing is going to bug you and nothing is going to break you. So I went in it. So that was, let's say, milestone one. The next checkpoint is you grow in your career and you start managing teams. And then you tell yourself, if I'm going to break, I don't really know what the others are looking and thinking and feeling. Perception matters. Your vibes matter. So you get on. Then in the last 10 years, as I've managed organizations, there is a responsibility on a shoulder. I am here because I stand on the shoulders of so many more senior leaders like Dr. Dhawan and others over here. I stand on the shoulders of so many people around the world. So when you're managing 100 people, 200 people, there are many more people you're accountable to now, no longer just the ladies, but also the gentlemen in the office, right? So you pay it forward, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to the industry, you owe it to a lot of things, you owe it to your family, these are values you stay by. So if I'm going to fight with my husband at home for some equality, I'm going to extend that most likely because my personality comes out as you get senior. So this is the personal part of it. Now, why renewables? I started out climate. I started on climate change. I started out on carbon markets. In those days, carbon markets was all about renewables, all about, I was in the US, it was oil. Oil was all really bad, bad, bad. And then coal was bad, bad, bad. So the way to get past it was renewables. In India, 10 years after I started, India was 18 rupees for solar. Today, what do we need? It's men and women alike. But what do we need now? What do we need? More ladies in the room. Isn't the more technical kind of stuff? We're moving off into storage. We're moving off into mobility. I'm trying so hard to charge these buses with renewable power, but oh God, the regulations are so difficult. We're not very competitive on our energy costs. We have to figure out, we need to put an army of economists in there, men, women, all, because we have to liberate our energy system. We are able to produce the cheapest form of energy. We should all do it. At that, it's just all hands on deck, men, women, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that goes without saying. This is such a evolving, sector, as was also highlighted by Vartika ji, that so much of changes that we need to keep updated. And of course, men and women both have a role to play. I'll move on to Gauri. Gauri, you've been in this space for quite some time in the consulting business, but specifically on your, journey. How did you come into this? So, yeah, over to you.
Thank you. It's great to be back here, and thanks to USISPF for inviting S&P Global and me to be here. I think it's questions like yours and platforms like this which just make you reflect on connecting the dots. And when I was thinking about connecting the dots, I think there's some key points which come in your journey, and they can start far back, right? So I recall, I think when I was growing up as a teenager, I saw two things. One was my uncle, who was in the Merchant Navy, took me to a ship in Chennai, and just boarding that ship, I don't know, it was like a light bulb moment where you just saw the enormity of a ship and how it carries goods around the world. And around the same time, there was someone more elder to me in my neighborhood who had just joined the shipping industry. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I should be in some something core, like something which is the backbone of whatever, the world. And just park that thought there, right? Roll forward a few years, and after college, again, you enter a decision point. What do you want to do? And I was a science student. I didn't I didn't get into engineering. So I was like, I think, and I had points. I kind of did the CA exam and also a law exam and also the economics exam. And it was a choice. And I remember there was a professor in CJM in Chanakyapuri who said, you'll become a better person being an economist. And I said, okay, that sounds good. And then I took the law exam, and my brother also took the law exam with me. And he chose to be a lawyer, and I chose to be an economist. And I roll forward all these years, and I think, not knowing where this would take me, I think what I credit it is with the choice of then the energy sector. And, this is an incredible sector where the energy system interacts with the economic system. So I think somewhere those dots really connected well for me. And I think what is special about my journey is I had some very nice people who guided me, mentored me along the way, and were generous in their time, their insights, to help shape that. And then, of course, I made something out of it. But had they not been there, I think things could have been different as well. So I think the role of I think it was asked, that question was asked in the prior panel. The role of mentors is very important.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a really important point. Moving on to Dr. Tripta Thakur. Welcome, ma'am. Always a pleasure to have you on the panel. So, ma'am, if you can also briefly touch upon your journey and, in the space energy sector.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm really sorry for coming a little late. Actually, I started my journey when I remember when I was eighth standard. My father, who was government contractor, he used to take me to the site, and he was constructing dam. So I was very fascinated. I wanted to become civil engineer. But once I got the admission in engineering college, in my time there was 5-year engineering, and then in the third year we used to choose the stream. And the teacher told me when I went, no, girls cannot take civil engineering. Either they can take, that time no computer science, they can take either electrical or electronics. That was discrimination, but that time we were not aware even about discrimination. As Mahua told, we are so young and we are ready to take any challenge, so I took electrical engineering. But during MTech program, in my engineering time also, in the class of 60, we were only 4 girls. But I always have boys as my company mates because I know I can learn from them, and this gives me a lot of confidence. So a little different than others. But when I joined my MTech in IIT Kanpur, I was the only girl among the 25 boys. And power electronics, as Ranjana madam told, we were not knowing power electronics. So they started from the converter, and I don't know the thyristor. So it was very difficult for me. So I asked, after 7 days, there was a quiz. So I asked one of the mate, जो भी आ गया हाथ में, उसको पूछा, I want to discuss something. He bluntly told me, I don't want to talk with the girls. So I was so annoyed. I just followed him. In the IIT Kanpur, you can enter into the boys' hostel, and boys can enter into the girls' hostel. He was not knowing. I was just following him. When he entered into the room, I was behind him. Then he saw me. Then he turned out from the room without saying any word. मैं बैठ गई. मैंने कहा आएगा वापस अपने रूम में ही आएगा. तो थोड़ी देर बाद मैंने देखा कि वो अपने मेरे 2 बैचमेट को साथ में लेके आ गया. अब बोला आप बताओ क्या समझना है. तो फिर हम लोगों ने असाइनमेंट शुरू किया. पूरी रात हम लोग करते रहे. ना उनको फील हुआ कि मैं लड़की हूँ, ना मुझे फील कभी मुझे तो होता ही नहीं था क्योंकि मैं हमेशा बॉयज़ के साथ रही. तो मुझे कभी नहीं लगता था कि ये कुछ डिफरेंट है. तो इस तरह आपको अपनी जर्नी खुद ही तय करनी होती है. फिर जब मैंने NPTI ज्वाइन किया तो 60 इयर्स में पहली विमेन DG बनी, तो बड़ा सबको प्रॉब्लम था कि कर पाएगी कि नहीं कर पाएगी. बाद में बताया सेक्रेटरी सर ने सिलेक्शन के बाद कि हमारे में बड़ी बहस हुई कि लेना चाहिए कि नहीं लेना चाहिए, कर पाएगी या नहीं कर पाएगी. इससे पहले मैं एक जगह और VC के लिए इंटरव्यू देने गई थी. वो यूनिवर्सिटी काफ़ी ख़राब हालत में थी और वहाँ बहुत ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम्स थी. तो लास्ट में गवर्नर ने मुझे नहीं सेलेक्ट किया और किसी मेल काउंटर पार्ट को सेलेक्ट किया. तो जो सिलेक्शन कमेटी थी, आई नो दैम, तो कभी वो मुझे मिले तो उन्होंने बताया कि हमने तो कहा कि आप इतनी वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट की बात करते हैं, मैडम को ले लीजिए, ठीक कर देंगी. तो गवर्नर को कॉन्फिडेंस ही नहीं आया. उन्होंने कहा नहीं इतनी प्रॉब्लम है, ये नहीं कर पाएंगी. लेकिन आज मैं देख रही हूँ कि ये कॉन्फिडेंस जितने लीडर्स आते जाएंगे. सो आई रियली वुड लाइक टू थैंक्स द ऑर्गेनाइजर्स फॉर टॉकिंग अबाउट दिस इशू. और हॉल में आधे मेल काउंटर पार्ट होने चाहिए क्योंकि हम तो अपनी समस्या समझते ही हैं. जब आप यहाँ आएंगे और आप अटेंड करेंगे तो आगे से हम बहुत अच्छे से इंक्लूसिवनेस में आगे बढ़ पाएंगे. थैंक यू.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. Obviously, the role men can play in this journey in order to mentor as well as to, work in the journey is very important, as was highlighted also by Mahua. So what I'll do is move on to the question, and maybe we can begin with you. It's specifically to your role in, NPTI. आपके आने के बाद, obviously, there's been a whole lot of change, and there's a, I'm sure the secretary feels vindicated. Yes, I made the right decision. So now the question was basically, what NPTI institution like NPTI can make a very pivotal role in terms of skilling women, specifically in this sector. So I just wanted to understand from you how you at the helm of NPTI are working towards this goal. I know you do quite a bit of work on this, but it would be great for the audience to also learn about that.
Yes. So in the transition, when we really want that women should participate in renewable, skilling as well as training and capacity building are going to play a major role. So we are in this area only. So in my all programs, I have given the special concession of 15% fees reduction for women, whether it's a MBA program or PGDCA program. We have started new PGDCA program in renewable energy also with MNRE. So this we are already doing, but with MNRE, we are going to start from July 25 onwards. So we are also doing the data segregation that in each training program, how many girls are coming. So this data we will put up. We really want that organization should be rated based on the data that how many women they are employing and sending for the training purpose. So this also we started. And already in many platforms I mentioned that for South Asia women, we started one program with the help of World Bank and SARIP, training 101 women from South Asia for entire 1 year duration last year. And today I'm really privileged. I could not attend the inauguration, but the second program is started from today itself. Classes will start from tomorrow. And this 1 year entire program of 100 women from different nations is online program. Only for 1 week we took them to AIT Bangkok, and Sudha Murthy ji has given the certificate to all of them. And whenever I go, recently I have been to Guwahati, and when somebody came to know that I am in Guwahati, so one of the participants from India, 31 women participated. So one woman, she just called me that I want to meet you. I said, okay, fine. So it's so lovely to meet the women who was connected with you for the entire 1 year duration. And she told me that why I want to meet you, because after finishing, I got a promotion and my people posted me into the substation. which is very remotely located, but they says that you should take charge of this substation. And I took the charge of substation. I was not handling earlier, so I just went to the classes again because all the classes material was available in online. She started reading. She was remembering, अच्छा ये इसने पढ़ाया था, class खोल के देखो. And she started working. And she told me that this training and capacity building has given me immense confidence to take any challenge out of it. Because when you are interacting people, you got confidence. So it is so important to give training and capacity building for mid-career women. Unfortunately, I'm not getting any sponsor in India who can sponsor exclusively for Indian. Why I'm advocating Indian women? Because when we selected 32 women, one woman told me that in Madhya Pradesh, she is belonging to Madhya Pradesh Electric Generation Company, that their secretary took the interview of 50 women to select one woman. So this is the platform. There is this absolute need for India also to, because once they will attend mid-career training program, they will definitely become a leader in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pam. That's very inspiring to know that a woman, who went through this sort of training has been benefited. I'll go on to Dr. Vibha Dhawan. Ma'am, you've been working with, TERI is known to be working on this renewable, especially in the off-grid space, as you were also highlighting. So how do you think, or how does TERI, really integrate gender equity in the renewable energy policies and projects, which TERI is doing, and also, influencing the government in terms of ensuring that the programs and the policies which they are bringing are more equitable?
Yeah, well, one thing which I must admit, and that is whether at TERI or at home, I never find gender biasness. In fact, yesterday I was teaching to my grandchild, and in a way he said, "Does it happen?" And I said, "Yes, in communities it does happen. It's only that we don't feel." In TERI, if I looked right from the senior management, we are too many women, rather, right from the beginning when I joined way back in 1985. But then when you are looking at policies, we were very, very sensitive towards what is happening to women otherwise, and especially in the rural India. Our first studies were on indoor air pollution because in villages, if you look at and whether the women are suffering from lung diseases, it's taken as ye to hota hai. Night blindness, ye to hota hai. Neither they eat properly nor we take care of what they are going through. In fact, I remember one of the forester who was working with me, and he was, at that time it was that women used to bring firewood back home. And he said we caught woman who was carrying lots of wood. And in a way, he said, that lady said, साहब जितना पीटना है पीट लो या आप पीट, लेकिन हमें लकड़ी ले जाने देना, नहीं तो बड़ो हमें बहुत पीटेगा. कि they were talking about their father-in-law, that we are going to have it from him, so you just let us take the wood, whatever your terms and conditions are. So that's the condition of women, and that's why one of our earlier projects were on improved cook stoves. So how do you give them? They need to use less of energy, and most of our projects, so whether it is briquetting, how do you make use of agriculture residue to make briquettes, what kind of stoves, how do you make use of energy, and so on. So we concentrated on how to give other opportunities as well as make their lives more simple. Again, biogas, that is again something in that direction. And one of our flagship programs, which was Light a Billion Lives, that was again creating opportunities for women, the entrepreneurship opportunities, because they were taught how to repair the solar lantern. So those were few early steps, and our work is not just restricted to India. We are working in Guyana, again a difficult country. They have now found oil, but till few years back they were very poor. And I was talking to one of my colleagues, what is it that is keeping you in this country? And he shared one particular instance. We are putting solar rooftops for them. And in one of the villages, after 2 months of their installing, they went, and in one particular household, it has gone bad. And it was minor repair. So the moment he repaired, he said that woman had a smile on her face and tears pouring from her eyes because she felt everyone else have access to clean energy except her. And that keeps us moving, that we need to work on it. And now also, like our projects in Mukteshwar, we give the right quality planting materials. We teach them how to grow to women, and thereafter through solar energy. And it is that how do you dry and make good quality products out of it. So that their livelihood opportunities, they improve, and at the same time, the conditions for their living are improved. So there are many such initiatives, small initiatives that we are taking.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing some of those initiatives with us. Okay, I'll move on to Gauri. Gauri, you've been at helm of, the whole energy transition, specifically at SSP Global. So what do you think are the opportunities in this clean energy transition, which is happening so fast? Where are the opportunities for women leaders specifically? From that perspective, if you can touch upon.
Sure. So first of all, I'm very happy to share that S&P Global is in India is rated as in the top 10 in for women in Great Place to Work. There are many categories in Great Place to Work, but we're in the top 10 for women. So I think it's great to be part of a company which really tries to walk the talk on being inclusive, respecting diversity, and diversity not just in gender terms, but in a wider term, but definitely gender diversity. And we do pride ourselves to be a people-first company because, in our business, we are a data analytics, research, and consulting company. So if our people are not happy, we cannot make our clients happy. So that's, I think, what really, and this is not just corporate speak. This is, I think, we as leaders and managers really try to live by it. That said, I would say broadly speaking, I think as consultants, and I've been a consultant for most of my life, I do see that there is, the energy industry goes through cycles, right? And there are cycles where energy security is more important. There are cycles where oil prices are high, oil prices are low. And there are cycles where new technologies make breakthroughs, right? So, what's really fascinating is that I think the opportunities are sort of at these intersection points of all these cycles. And I think, when I shared about my background, what I really cherish is the fact that this is like probably one, I mean, every industry gets impacted by different factors, right? But I think this is one industry where no matter whether you're talking at the international level, the national level, the sub-local level, take any aggregation of society, there are factors of economics, politics, geopolitics, and social factors, as Dr. Dhawan also pointed out, which come into the application of energy, which come into energy consumption, energy demand. So to understand energy demand in India, for example, one has to understand, the factors that Dr. Dhawan shared, the factors that Dr. Thakur shared. I think, so it's a very all-in view, but at the same time, one has to have the ability to zoom in and zoom out, right? So zoom into the 2,000 foot level, but also zoom out to the 50,000 foot level and try to make sense of the whole. So I think there are lots of opportunities. I mean, this is an opportunity rich space. I think it's about creating the right pull. We as leaders, about telling the right stories, shaping the narratives, and just showing how rich this industry is as a place where, it's not just about sustainability. I think these days sustainability has become like this buzzword. I sometimes interact with a lot of my friends' children who are getting into college, and they're like, I want to be in sustainability. And I'm like, but what is sustainability? Pick a core sector, pick a core discipline, and then take it to sustainability. It's not just sustainability, right? So I think that's what opportunity rich.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much. Mahua, moving on to you. You did talk about these innovative approaches, and how the sector is changing. And building on what Gauri just said, what I would, kind of pose you the same question. How do you think what ecosystem is needed to really, have more women as entrepreneurs, or, you know, maybe in a consulting business, or maybe, you know, as a mid-level professional? What ecosystem is needed to really nurture that?
So I come at the energy transition business for now, uh, let's say through the lens of mobility. It's a big chunk. It's a chunk enough that moves the needle, and it's quite recent. So it's a here and now issue. So I'd say, you know, if I were to answer your question specifically, let me identify what the needs are, and then where the skill lies, and where the skill is absent, have to build the skill. So in the energy transition business right now, I mean, I'll be preaching to the converted. Over 2/3 of our energy installed is renewable. More than 3/4 of the energy we're using right now is still coming from fossil fuel. So we have to move very quickly to change it. It needs to be the other way around, if not fully. Right? So the energy transition business, and I feel for many of my brick and mortar friends, you know, I feel like the power plant friends will understand what I'm talking about. We have a need in the regulatory space. If we were to merge everything, policies across the country, we have pockets of unutilized demand, oversupply. We're not able to inject the supply into the grids because we have a situation on our grids where the grids cannot accept anymore daytime power. We need to move that very quickly. For that, what is the skill you need? You need to understand power sector regulations. Unfortunately, or fortunately, or perhaps unfortunately, right now, we have a huge legacy of regulations. That business has been going on for so long that it takes newcomers many, many, many days of months and years of research to know what was that little amendment that took place on some part of the regulation. So, but that is needed. There's one big portion of policy work that needs to come in there. What's the other skill? It's the technical skill. Do I understand the battery? Do I understand how it works? Do I understand the chemistry of it? And then the third bit is combining the two. We're changing as a country in our education system. I've been teaching at at IIM Ahmedabad for a little over a decade now. And it's been a little bit of a bugbear that our education system for the longest time was very, very siloed. When I was in school, I had to decide at class 11 what I was going to study. So if I studied science, as I did, I couldn't also combine it with English literature, which I liked. But I couldn't do it, it was not offered. As a result, your mind is thinking that if I do math, physics, and I'll be probably teaching to the converted, if we can please de-silo, that the people that understand the battery business must also be able to understand the policy business, and must also then be able to understand, well, we need to make it, the whole business has to be a little inclusive. By inclusive, I mean sensitive out here. So, I mean, I do want, you know, we have to have many more men in the dialogue. The power sector in particular, and Dr. Thakur knows this very well, has a legacy of engineers, all of whom happen to be men. Nothing wrong with that because that's how we were. But I would appeal then to women out there to make that one step forward, because as far as the energy transition is concerned, it should be a completely gender neutral. And I do want to be at a place where we don't have any more, much as events like this are really good and thank you for having them, we shouldn't really be, winner would be when we don't have women events. They're all, you know, neutral. It shouldn't make a difference to anybody.
Thanks. We do have a lot of events which are gender neutral. That goes without saying. A lot of clean energy, you know, dialogues and other things. Yeah, as an ambition for sure. But right now, I mean, we also recognize that, you know, women are not represented as much as we should. That's why we continue to deliberate. Yeah. So I'll move on to Rachna ma'am. Rachna ma'am, if you can quickly touch upon. So you've worked with research and you worked with industry as IEEE former chair. So how do you bridge the gap? How do you equip the women to really, you know, be able to do well in the space?
Okay, thank you for the question. Actually, India is in a very transitory phase where we are going from the fossil fuels to the clean and green energy by the renewable energy sources. And our Prime Minister, he has set a target of around 500 gigawatts of electrical power to be generated from non-fossil fuels. And also, we are in a stage where we are talking about one world, one sun, and one grid. And here we are talking about a power capacity of 2600 gigawatt to be transferred from one region to another. So you can see a huge impact of renewable energy in the power sector. And it is imperative that women should also contribute to this huge and undeniable change in the power scenario. Since I am more concerned with the academia and research areas, I have many researchers who are working under me in the area of renewable energy, both male and female. Here I had found that the female researchers, they are very good and they have good capacity, but what they lack is the confidence. When I talk about, when I talk to them to develop a hardware model, they will say, no, ma'am, we are not into it. The male student, they can do the hardware development, but we are more comfortable with simulation. Why is it so? I always tell them, no, you will also work for hardware. If your male counterpart can do it, so can you. You can also build a hardware. It is only a question of skill and the hard work that you have to put in. You have to be in lab for maybe 20 hours a day if you are developing a hardware. Nowadays, you have to be prepared for that. In universities, you still have a protective environment where you can work on hardware, you can develop hardware, and you can still have some mistakes, and you can afford to make that mistakes. But once you go to the real life, in real life scenario, when you go and join some organization, you will not get those chances of making mistakes. You have to be on your own. There, it is only your skill that count, not the gender. You cannot hide behind your gender. That I am a woman, I cannot stay for that long. I am a woman, I cannot do this or I cannot do that. So you have to build confidence in yourself. You have to build confidence in your ability. And this is only a mental block. You have to come out of that mental block. You have to push your boundaries, which are made by you only. It is you who has to push those boundaries. You have to come out of those boundaries, and you have to develop the skill set. And as an academician and as a former IEEE chairperson and a former director of Equal Opportunity Cell at Delhi Technological University, we give emphasis on organizing the capacity building program for the women, which are especially made for women. And also we tell them the concept of time management, prioritizing their life, the importance of different events there in their life, so that they can allot a block of time for each activity and then they can manage their time effectively. Also, we organize workshops where they can meet with their role models or where they can meet with the women luminaries in different areas, whether it is a government sector, it is a public sector, private sector, or academia. There, the female leaders, they share their experiences, their case histories, and this motivates the women a lot, young women engineers, my young colleagues, researchers, that if these ladies, they can do it, so can I. And this instills a confidence in their abilities, and it helps them in overcoming their boundaries. So if as a academician I can instill that confidence in my researchers and in my young colleagues, I think I will make them industry ready, and I can help them to be a better leader when they go out in their workforce. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachna ma'am. That's very pertinent. Confidence is very important, obviously. We are at our time, closing time, but we'll just go quickly to our last question. I'm sure Ripu can give us few more extra minutes. And I'll go that side since we began from this side. So, ma'am, last question, which is common for all of you, and I won't repeat it, is basically, what is that one actionable item you think for the stakeholder, whether it's government, industry, academia, that needs to be, taken to really empower women to play a more active role in the energy sector? And I'm being general, not clean energy, but energy sector. And what would be your one call to action? What would you do in order to really, motivate or encourage or inspire the women in the audience to get into the field and do well and prosper and get into the higher management?
Yeah. So my stake is definitely skilling and capacity building. So every organization should collect the data, how many women are working, how much opportunity they are giving to the women to attend the training and capacity building program. Of the record, I can share when we are taking women to the Bangkok, my ministry file was not cleared. So then I inquired. Then one comment I got that ये महिलाएं बैंकॉक जाके क्या करेंगी. सो दिस काइंड ऑफ एटीट्यूड नीड टू बी चेंज. तो हमने आंसर किया कि जो आप करते हैं वही हम करेंगे. सो ट्रेनिंग एंड कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग, कलेक्टिंग डेटा and giving them confidence, mentorship is very important for women.
Sorry?
Sure. So I think while it's good to know what barriers have to be overcome, I don't think I ever went into the energy industry thinking I'm a woman and I have to, face this barrier. I think the barriers are in the mind. So I think gender consciousness is important to make sure imbalances don't exist, make sure there are barriers are overcome, but never keep thinking of that I'm a woman and therefore, so I think that division has to go off in the mind first. And then, as I mentioned before, that the energy sector is incredible because it's this point of intersection of all different, sociology, economics, international relations, politics. So in schools and colleges, I think if the right pull can be created, that, even if you're from the geopolitics field or you're a sociologist, you have a role in the energy sector. Because those lenses are needed to understand energy. So I think the pull has to be created far stronger.
Mawa?
If you see something, say something. That would be fun. I would appeal to the ladies out there. If you want something, ask for it. And I'd appeal to the men out there. It's not easy to recruit at the top. You want a diverse board, you want a diverse management team. I'm aware that it's very tough. Those candidates don't exist. There are barriers, there are mental barriers. I would appeal to the men out there, please stop, make that little extra step to look for. Reach out and look for. Then, of course, evaluate for merit. Of course, that goes without saying. But if you don't look for, your subset is already skewed.
Absolutely. Madam.
Well, I'll put it this way. First of all, girls also have to change a lot. And their biggest problem is that don't say I'm a girl. Mere ko ghar dekhna hai. I have a small child. So I said the moment you start asking for these excuses, you're cutting on your own growth. So never ask for those. And in a way, it is somewhere when I say they have to change, and I'll take my own example at home. I have a young daughter-in-law, and once she had a little baby. Even before he was born, he left her job. And after the child was 6 months old, I had to really force her. I said, you have to get out of the house, otherwise your child would get used to seeing you around. And I'm sure she's very happy now because she gets a break. Because so that way it is. But I do see there are many girls who they come with their resignation letter that my in-laws are not permitting me. They are saying once you have a baby, you have to be at home. And that is what I'll say, that is killing our society. We are teaching them all right. In the school, we teach them gender biasness should not be there. They excel in class 12. We do have lots of very good engineers, but we lose them 4 or 5 years after they start with their career. Somehow we have to break that. And for that, it's both men and women, because if your husband is with you, you can do it.
Absolutely. Ma'am.
So I think one very important aspect which will help us in overcoming this gender bias is having more women in the leadership positions at the decision making levels. Just like Dr. Tripta said, कि one of the comment that she heard is कि महिलाएं जाकर क्या करेंगी, and this comment can come only from a male part only. If there is a woman at the decision making level, she will never say this thing कि women क्या करेंगी वहाँ जाकर, because she knows women are capable and they are much more capable and do a lot when they go out and what is expected from them. So one thing that I want more and more women to be in decision making position. Then secondly, I want government to have some women-centric policies. The government policies about the just like childbirth is one of the important milestone in every woman's life, and with government policies like 6 months of maternity leave, 2 years of child care leave, this is really helpful in you can say. In closing the leaky pipeline. I know I am using a very cliched word, leaking pipeline, but this is a fact. And because of these government policies, now the leaking pipeline is now not anymore, or not I can say anymore is there, but we have a lower leakage in the overheads. And so, a government-centric policies, skill development programs for the women, giving them proper opportunities. Like in IEEE, we have WIE track in all the conferences, where the papers with women researchers, if one of the authors is a woman, or if all the researchers are women, those papers are included. So this motivates the women researchers to work hard and submit their paper to the conferences. Similarly, just like government has a policy of 20% supernumerary seats in every educational institutes. This is very good in balancing the gender bias or having a balanced gender ratio in the universities. Just like that, I would like to request the funding agencies like MNRE or DST to have some fund allocation for the women researchers, for the projects which have at least one of the researcher as women. And this will give more opportunities to women, and it will motivate more women to come into the area of research uh, and research and development, and that will help in equalizing the gender bias. So,
Thank you so much. I mean, lots of interesting points, and many of the things which all of you said, kind of echoes from the earlier session also. Confidence, initiative, at least ask for it. I mean, you need to go out and ask for it. Have confidence in yourself. I mean, men are important players, stakeholder, whether at home or in the office or in the general environment. They need to be there so that we have the gender parity in the energy sector. Also, women-centric policies program, whether it's government or whether it's within a corporate or industry, would be helpful. Although I do agree that women need to be given that equal opportunity and an extra chance, as Mahua was saying, that extra bit to really go out and look out and get them on board. But then after that, it's all about the skill. It's all about qualification and how well you do. And there I'm sure none of us here are asking for that, angle coming, women angle or the gender angle coming at that point of time. It's just that, they need a level playing field at this point of time, or positive discrimination, as I heard the other day, that they are at that space where it's all gender equal. There is no disparity, whether it's a woman or a man, it's all equal in the energy space. And that's what we are hoping with SAVI, initiatives like SAVI, and working with all of you, inspiring leaders to really address. With that, we come to a close to our second session. And thank you so much. Please, a round of applause for our great panelists.